All right. Greetings. Thank you for being here. So I'm Argentieri. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Arklabs. And I've been working on the Arc protocol for the last 2 years, right now. Most of you maybe never heard about Arc, or if yes, you're probably very confused. I'm not going to talk about the protocol today, but I'm going to maybe just introduce the virtual UTXO, which is the core breakthrough of the Arc protocol. I think the virtualization is an important concept. I just want to borrow and go back in history, in the history of the internet. Early days, developer, if you're in the early 2000, you want to build a web application, you have to take a server in a data center, install it, right? And usually you had one server, one company, right? Which was limiting a lot the amount of web application and the company that could afford that. But not only that. Imagine it's Christmas, you're running an e-commerce, and what happens is you need to go there and increase, having a bigger machine, right? So you need to vertical scale. And that, of course, was like something that's not going to work, and all developers from the early days wanted horizontal scaling. I think this is important because it's really where we are, I think, with Bitcoin at this moment. We have a good infrastructure, but we miss this horizontal scalability to allow use cases to be built on top of Bitcoin. In the 2006, Amazon, with Amazon Web Services, introduced AC2, which is elastic compute, which it just means that finally you can have a virtual machine that looks like a server. You can connect, you have an IP address, you enter, but at the same time, in the back, you have total disconnection, so you can really horizontal scale. And that has been a breakthrough. So we unlocked a $1 trillion industry of the internet, which means if you're a developer, you don't care anymore to go to the data center, installing a server, having an IP address. You just build your web application, and that's it. Social media, that's what we have today, our $1 trillion industry. And we really think that in the end, that's where we are in an inflection point for Bitcoin. And it's evident that right now, the mempool, the Bitcoin mempool, is empty. And it doesn't mean Bitcoin is not being used. Bitcoin is being used more, but where? ETF, BlackRock, offchain, other blockchains. Because people left. People said, well, every UTXO, which we can have an analogy, is like the physical server. It's, well, I'm not going to use a UTXO, right? So I'm going to use a database. I'm going to use a custodian because it will be faster, cheaper. And I think that's where we need to think about it, right? So how we can bring back use cases to Bitcoin to be done using Bitcoin without giving up custody, right? And one thing important that maybe is not obvious, but when you have the mempool, now it's empty, but if tomorrow we start having a lot of transaction, the mempool will spike, and basically business will be forced to pay whatever is the fee right now. And that's a really bad dynamics for business, because if you're a business, you need to do a contract, a swap, a loan, or anything. You cannot say to your customer, hey, I'm sorry, the mempool is clogged today, come back next month. That's a problem, right? So that's a problem that you can only solve if we find a way to have true horizontal scalability. So how we do this, and I think Arc, and especially what we are doing with Arkade, our implementation, the idea is taking the UTXO, which is the core primitive of Bitcoin, and virtualizing it. So you will hear about, if you go look on internet about Arc, you will see VTXO, virtual UTXO everywhere. And I think that's the very basics. So the virtual UTXO gives you control, so you're not trusting a third party. You are always in control of your funds. You can always unilateral exit, this is Bitcoin, right? So you need to have control. You don't need to ask a friend of a friend to get back your money. But at the same time, you want something that is faster, cheaper, more flexible to use, so we can really unleash Bitcoin native application. The first primitive is what I call, and I think Arc, the best way to describe Arc is transaction batching. The idea is like exchange right now, Coinbase, Binance, when they do a withdrawal, right, they usually do already transaction batching, right? So in a single transaction, they put, I don't know, 100 recipient, right, 100 outputs, And usually that's give you a little bit of cost saving. That's great. But at the same time, first is only custodian that can do this. And second, yes, you can only have 100 people sharing a same transaction, but it's still expensive. So what Arc do is having one output, and that one output I can have nested tens of thousands potentially of virtual transaction output. And that's horizontal scaling, which means more people, less the cost. So we are not tied anymore to be, crippled by the mempool, and we can really have a cost saving. That's a very basic. That's really what R gives. R gives transaction batching, lower the cost in a self-custodial way, because this virtual transaction output means that if the operator that is helping you to batch goes away or is malicious, you can always unilateral exit. What we are doing with our implementation is the idea of creating, we said, well, we are virtualizing the UTXO, why we don't virtualize also the mempool? Which means we are having an infrastructure that allow you also to have instant pre-confirmation, so then you can go to the server and say, hey, I have a VTXO, why don't we co-sign together and we advance a sequence of transactions that you can at least order right now and give me a timestamp right now about this transaction. And for many businesses, that will be a good trust trade-off. We are adding an additive security using secure element, which are being used by banks and sophisticated enterprise nowadays to make sure the operator is also guaranteeing you that this pre-confirmation is not going to be double spam. So then you have the ability to settle, to batch in the next block, and to have time to eventually build other sequence of transactions. The interesting part, and I think especially if you're familiar with the Ethereum kind of architecture, the beauty of UTXO and the beauty of virtual UTXO is we inherit the parallel scaling and the parallel execution that UTXO style architecture of blockchain gives to us. And that's very important because it means a single operator can really execute potentially in a parallel way many UTXO contract, many UTXO sequence of contract without having a scalability issue. If you're familiar with Ethereum, Solana, etc., right now I think you need to have giga validator nodes, which really centralize a lot their validators. Another important concept is the dynamic settlement. If you came from a blockchain understanding, you say, okay, how often I get a confirmation? 7 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 minutes, right? I think the interesting part that we are introducing with Arkade is the concept to say, well, you will have a priority, you will have a max fee that you can declare in an intent, and you will decide when is the right moment to get settlement and to get full unilateral exit in a super batch, so super compressed way, lowering the cost of your transaction, and also giving the capability to business to evaluate their risk, evaluate when they want to settle, and not like, for example, right now, when you make a Bitcoin transaction, you're sending a transaction, and then please bump because I want to receive it. That's bad, right? So the sender needs to decide the fee, how much, and when it will be confirmed. I think in Arkade we flip this, right? So the recipient will decide, well, I'm going to pay now, I want to enter the next block, and I want to get full unilateral exit right now, or maybe I'm okay with waiting maybe next week, right? And this gives, I think, the flexibility that many companies really require. Market already knows how to evaluate risk, when to do that, et cetera, et cetera. The additive security we're adding with the using trust execution environment is the concept that the software that our operator is running is anyone can verify, anyone can see that the version of the software that is running is the version that we claim to do, since it's open source code. And at the same time, the moment someone will tamper or will change it, it will basically show the fingerprint that that's not genuine anymore. The other aspect which is interesting is the key of our operator is generated in the enclave, which is not accessible by a human. And these allow us to end-to-end encrypt the communication between the client and the secure enclave, and basically not having any visibility on the VTXO. Now, in terms of use cases, because that's a nice, let's say, architecture, but at the same time, okay, what we can do with this, right? So what in practice we're going to do? So there is a concept if you are building contracts in the UTXO paradigm, which is commit reveal. Commit reveal is pretty powerful. At the same time, in the blockchain, in the real mempool, it will cost you at least 2 transactions. And this is like limiting many businesses, many enterprises to say, well, this is nice, but like, it's gonna be cost me much. So, but here we have a virtual mempool, so we can really decouple from the fee bidding wars in the mempool. And finally, for example, like I think the first use case that everybody of us as Bitcoiner we have is Lightning payments, right? So, and the Lightning payments, we think the best architecture for that is swaps. Swap is a contract, and we can execute a contract as a first-class citizen in Arkade, and the idea will be you can use that in a simple way, so developer for them is just like VTXO set. I want to pay with Lightning, I will swap it, all people will swap to me, and that's super easy for developer to implement Lightning finally without custodial or without subpar federation setup. I think there are many other use cases that right now are growing. For example, one most interesting for me is loans. So right now people want to use their Bitcoin, but they don't want to sell it, right? So they want to borrow against it. There are many use cases already on the Bitcoin blockchain, but we're really like early days. And imagine if tomorrow we reach banking scale and we need to do, I don't know, thousands of loans per second. How we can do that on the Bitcoin mempool? It won't happen. People will move away again to other blockchain or to custodial solution because you cannot offer to your customer the instant confirmation that they want. So loans, definitely, I really see that as an interesting use case. That is UTXO native. And the interesting part, oh yeah, you can do that on Ethereum. Well, you cannot do Bitcoin on Ethereum, right? So yeah, you can use a wrapped Bitcoin, but here you have a native Bitcoin, which is a better version than a wrapped version of that. Escrow, marketplace, for me, that's very important kind of primitives that in the early days when I was using Bitcoin, everybody was doing an escrow for everywhere. In every commerce, they were using a contract, an escrow contract. Nobody's using escrow anymore. Why? Costs more, and people just left, maybe. Who were using them, they just left, and they are like another ecosystem. Yep, there are more advanced use cases, betting contracts. I mean, Satoshi Dice was one of the first use cases of Bitcoin, right? So we think that we can revive that spirit and potentially do that for things. I really think also payment channels are still very interesting, especially when we bring in that won't be only humans doing payments, but we have AI agents that can send payments, and they are going to do trillions of payments between each other, and they're not going to have a credit card, right? So I think Bitcoin is the perfect money. I think if it's a very smart agent, should understand that Bitcoin is the only blockchain that matters, and a VTXO is very, very manageable, very easy for them to make payments, access web services, et cetera, et cetera. Now, we don't stop here in the sense, yes, we can leverage Bitcoin script, the normal Bitcoin opcodes, but we said, well, we have this pre-confirmation state. Why we don't add more opcodes, right? So if you are in the Bitcoin community or in the Bitcoin discourse, everybody's talking about covenants. Well, guys, Arkade has covenants, so come build. In the sense that in this pre-confirmation, we have an interpreter, and whenever you broadcast a transaction to the virtual mempool, we execute those opcodes, and you can have introspection, you can have any kind of things that you can imagine. You can build more advanced pooling, lending pools, trading pools, et cetera, et cetera. There is some caveat there. We have a documentation, of course. I don't want to bore you with technical details, but we really think that we are, adding more programmability to Arkade. And I really invite you to look forward. I'm very excited about non-interactive swaps. And this is very important. If you're doing cross-chain swaps, you know how free options are very bad. Introspection of code helps you in that. Lending, synthetic asset, I'm very interested about that. I'm really looking forward to see what developer will build. So just to wrap up, you have virtual UTXO, virtual mempool, virtual machine. Well, we really think that this is an execution layer, right? So it's a combination, and we're really interested to bring to the world our architecture, which in the end is just using very basic concepts that already exist to Bitcoin today. PSBTs, music, Taproot, not more, not less. So now you will say, well, okay, thank you. This is nice ideas and nice, philosophy behind. But like, is it real? Well, we already built, working the last 6 months, close to developers, 3 libraries, software development kit, in 3 major languages. So we have JavaScript, JavaScript, Rust, and Go. Please go to our GitHub, start using it, start looking into it, tell us what you think. We are open to feedback, and of course, we are going to have more SDK for more language as we go. Also, you will say, another SDK, we have more SDK than wallets or application. We also build that, right? So we have a wallet, it's open source, MIT license, please come, fork it, use it. We did that not because we want to build a wallet, but mostly because we want to put ourselves in the shoes of developer and see, well, is this the right library? Is this the right technology that developer really want to come back to Bitcoin and building contract, payments, et cetera, et cetera. We are very happy with the result. I think it's a very nice wallet. Please come, try, and use it. We have a testnet available, so anyone can use it right now, but I'm very interested also for you guys to take it and use it. I had another guy before that I met in the conference. He said to me, well, I don't understand Arc because I don't bother to read the white paper, but I built a wallet in 2 nights. So I don't know how it is. It seems magic. It seems too simple. I don't believe you. But yeah, it's working. So yeah, that has been a very good feedback. And yeah, so please take a look. This is more like an advanced topic, and we are working in our roadmap. But the idea is like, if you want to go back and attract again people, businesses to execute contracts on Bitcoin again, well, we need to give them a simple language that they can use to write smart contract and not worrying about low-level Bitcoin script opcodes. So we are building a compiler, we are building a language, we are building on top of Ivy. If you're back in the days, Ivy was a nice, interesting smart contract language for Bitcoin. We're just building on top of that, make it Taproot native, TypeScript native, and of course it will also take in consideration Arc, VTXO paradigm, but we already generalized this enough that we're very confident that it can be a good developer tooling to create new use cases and attract back developer to Bitcoin. Okay, when you guys launching, right? So that's nice. What when? So yeah, we're already committed in the Q3 to launch our operator live. So Arkade will be live on mainnet on Bitcoin. Actually, we're already in a private, let's say, mainnet in the end because it's not a blockchain, right? It's a client-server protocol. We can spin up instances to test. We are already 5 to 6 design partners already working closely with us because we really want to go live with already an ecosystem. So you can do lightning swaps, cross-chain swaps, loans. So we're already working with the usual suspect you may imagine. So yeah, keep an eye on us. And if you are a developer or you, in any case, you are thinking to building on Bitcoin, well, give a look. Documentation is available. All the SDK are all open source. So it's already good moment for you to start if you want to be the first. Thank you, and yep, thank you so much.
Secure your BTC Prague 2026 ticket at the lowest possible price now.